Long before humans started to write, long before language was invented, stories were told and engraved upon stones and walls. Literature is the foundation of humanity's cultures, beliefs, and traditions. It serves as a reflection of reality, a product of art, and a window to an ideology. Everything that happens within a society is recorded in or learned from literature. And books, as someone has rightly said, are traveling machines. They take us to the past or future or somewhere in between. They take us to places no passport can take us or to areas no one knows about. Well, I'm sure by now you must have guessed a few things about our guest for this episode. A book publisher with 40 years of worldwide experience with a consistently excellent record in people development, problem solving, and creating profitable businesses. He began as sales manager of Corgi Books in London. He was then sales director of Penguin Books in the UK and Europe, and later he was invited to be a co founder of a new company, Bloomsbury Publishing. And in 1997, he started Bloomsbury in New York, which we all know has had authors who have won the Nobel, Pulitzer, and Booker Prizes, and is the originating publisher and custodian of the Harry Potter series. Our esteemed guest now has his own publishing company and he works as a consultant for a major publisher. This is the very magnificent Alan Wherry, and let's go ahead and welcome him on the show. Hi, Alan. So good to have you on the show.
You're making me blush.
Really nice to be talking to you. Well, there's so much to talk to you about, but first, take us through your journey of Sergio meditation from the time you started it, indicating any milestones where you found it particularly helpful, Alan.
Okay. Well, when Bloomsbury started in London in 1986, it was really, really hard going. And for example, we started publishing in April 87. The biggest stock market crash since the 30s happened that October, and our business plan was in ruins, just didn't make any sense anymore. That's within a couple of months of starting. So we really had to work hard. And after maybe 3-4 years, there was daylight. And we suddenly started being successful. And in England, in London, people started seeing us as like the most cool, imaginative new publisher. And of course, these things are mental projections. They're not really based on reality. And one day, the deputy managing director said to me, Alan, do you consider yourself a success? And I could see why he was asking the questions, because he didn't. And I said, well, in the outside world, that's how the world sees me. But when I go through the door of my home, I'm a failure. I'm a failure as a father, as a husband. And in my own eyes, I'm a failure. So a short time afterwards, I worked in a beautiful London square called Soho Square. And next door was Paul McCartney's offices. So one day I walked out of the office and went to buy a cup of coffee, and I saw this picture of an Indian lady. And I was just enthralled. And she was giving a public lecture that coming Friday night in Hammersmith Town Hall, which was on my way home. And every time I went out of the office, I thought, it's probably one of those Indian cults. They want your money, or they want you to do things that you wouldn't of your free will do. But every time I walked out the office, I just couldn't take my eyes off her face, this lady who was giving the lecture. And I thought, I'd quite like to go to that. But then I thought, if I mention it to my wife, she'll just ridicule me, you see? But on the Friday, she phoned me up. She also worked in publishing. And she had to go to Glasgow with a big superstar author for him to do television interviews. So I was free to go. So I went along to Hammersmith Town Hall and I sat near the back so I could make a quick escape. And, I didn't really like much of what I saw, except when Srimataji came on the stage, I was transfixed and she spoke just to my heart and she gave self-realization to the people who were there. And I was just blown away. I could feel my Kundalini crashing out the top of my head. I was in a state of complete bliss. And as I drove home that night, I knew my life had changed, but I didn't realize the extent to which it would change. So that's how I came across this. I found out a few months later, the leader of Sahaj Yoga in England said to me, there was 1,000 new people at Hammersmith Town Hall the night you were there. Have you any idea how many are still doing this? And I said, no, I don't know. I mean, what, 200? He said, just you. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was astounded because when I discovered this, I was sure that the world would change quickly. And because I did, that's a big mistake. In the early days of Christianity, the early Christians were also convinced, first of all, that Jesus would come back, and secondly, that the world would change quickly. Well, it didn't. So anyway, that's how I discovered Sahaj Yoga. I also discovered miracles. I mean, it wasn't just that um, I had an extraordinary experience. I used to smoke a lot. I tried all sorts of things to stop smoking. I was acupunctured. I'd done this. I'd done that. Um, and I never smoked again. I have also never took drugs again. And I'd tried very, very hard to stop taking drugs. And a woman once told me, you'll give up taking drugs when the price you pay is more than any benefit you get. Well, that didn't apply to me. I carried on even when the price that I was paying was astronomical. But from the first time I met Sri Mataji, I never took drugs. I never smoked again. I I used to drink alcohol a little bit, but that gradually faded away. It wasn't after a few months, I gave that up as well. But the most extraordinary thing happened. Believe it or not, I was depressed from the age of about 14 to 47. That's 33 years. That's a long time to be depressed. It was never clinically diagnosed, but I knew I was depressed. And the more successful I was in the outside world, the more depressed I became. And from the moment I had that first experience with Srimataji, I was never depressed again. Now, I got to tell you, it's not a panacea for depression. Not everybody who does Sahaj Yoga will cease to be depressed. But that was my situation, and I wasn't complaining about it. And all of a sudden, and I mean, in some of the jobs I had, I didn't know what time of year it was. I was working in an air-conditioned office. It could have been winter, spring, or summer. And I was driving home and doing the stuff I had to do. All of a sudden, I noticed leaves and clouds and the grass. My world changed.
So nice. It's so amazing to hear all of those experiences, Alan. So, Alan, one of your colleagues, and I think that's Bloomsbury USA book editor Karen, said that it was typical of you to take pleasure in life's oddities and imperfections. And in this world of today, where we get disturbed at the slightest irregularity, what do you have to say about dealing with imperfect life situations or people?
Well, Here's the way I look at it. My wife is Russian. If I was in a state of perfection, she wouldn't give me 5 minutes. And I've been married to her for 25 years. So if I'm looking for perfection in others, I'm going to be permanently disappointed. But people can change and people can improve. I'll tell you one thing I noticed in my business life that, and my father first told me this, if you take the average guy, let's say in publishing, so the average person who's in sales and publishing, well, you can divide them into three. One of them will be a mechanic. They can operate the sausage machine. They can turn the handles and they won't get fired. That's not very inspiring, but most people operate the sausage machine in life, in business. Then there are people who can see opportunities that the sausage machine operator can't, and they'll take advantage of the opportunity. And then there's a third category who's probably maybe 10% of all the people I ever worked with. And that is, they can operate the sausage machine. They can see an opportunity and take advantage of it. But if there's no opportunities, they will make them. Now, those were the people I always tried to hire. And you can't always see them in an interview. And I can tell you, it's got nothing to do with bits of paper that they've got from whatever university they attend, nothing whatsoever. The woman you just mentioned, Karen Rinaldi. So I started Bloomsbury in New York with one other person. Everybody said it would fail. Well, I hired this woman, Karen Rinaldi, for the same reason that her previous employers, Crown Publishing, fired her. I liked her stroppiness, her opinions, right? And for example, she once said to me, look, my boyfriend has a friend and he's got an article coming up in the New Yorker magazine. I think it would make a great book. Do you want to read it? So I said, okay. So I read it and I said, I don't think so. I mean, this does nothing for me. I said, how much would it cost to get this author to turn it into a book? She said, I could get it for $80,000. So I said, go for it. And she was surprised. She said, but you don't like it. I said, look, I didn't hire you because you like the same things that I like. I hired you because you're different to me. So go and get it. So she did. She went and bought the rights to the book. She helped the author create a book out of what was an article in the New Yorker. And his name was Anthony Bourdain. You know, that celebrity chef? So she made his career, you see? So she's the sort who creates opportunities when none exists.
That's really so nice to, hear all of those experiences from you, Alan. Well, Alan, you've seen tremendous success in your career, and one would imagine someone with that level of success to be a go-getter. And on the contrary, people who you've worked with say that you live in the moment and you say what the future may hold is irrelevant until it happens. So one might ask, how is it possible to live in the moment or also to plan or maybe not plan for success?
I've never planned for anything, ever. I've never had goals or objectives, not ever. And anybody I ever saw who was any good at anything, they never had either. For example, I worked for this genius publisher called Peter Mayer. He was a Jewish guy. I think he was born in Berlin. His parents came to London. And then when he was 4, he came to New York. Well, I could just tell you so much that was outstanding about him. But he turned around Penguin. Penguin was losing money hand over fist, and they brought him from New York to England. And he completely transformed Penguin. But he didn't do it because he had goals and objectives and plans. You see, people like that don't need those. Those are fine for people who aren't creative. You see what I mean? And I'll tell you a funny story. A couple of years ago, I did I did a consultancy, and it wasn't working. And so the guy that I was reporting to said to me, phoned me up and said, "Look, can we set an objective that you'll get your first deal by September?" This is like March. And I said to him, "Well, look, you can set it for this afternoon if you like, or for next month, or for September. It's not going to make me do anything different." And he was so shocked and upset. He was a Harvard Business School guy. And I said, "Look, this is a way of beating people up. You're just adding further to the pressure that people are under. If I can get you a deal, I'll get you one. You can bet your bottom dollar I will. But I'm not going to make any additional effort because you've put some ridiculous artificial objective on me." See, the thing is, being successful is a lot easier than people think, but it's high risk. If you can only be successful by doing it differently to everybody else, and there's a risk of failure. I can tell you, I've failed more times than I succeeded, but those failures don't matter, because if you produce a million-selling book, everybody forgets the failures. And you will not. Let me tell you something. When I was at Penguin, they celebrated their 50th anniversary. They published a book privately for the staff. Now, in this book, guess how many finance directors appear in the book? They're important. Yeah, they make the company work financially. None. Not one. So I could go through human resource directors, none. Warehouse directors, none. Distribution, print directors, the guys who buy the printing for the books, none. Sales directors, just me. Why me? Because I did something that no sales director should ever do. I was about to be fired. And let me tell you this, in the 50 years of Penguin, they had 35 sales directors. So that means the average lasts about 18 months. When I was there a year, my number was up. They were all out everybody was out to fire me. I asked a boy to cross the street to write a book for me. We rush published it. It sold 4 million copies. And all of a sudden, I was a superstar instead of the guy who's about to have his head chopped off. It's a high-risk strategy. And luck comes into it.
True. And those are some really important points that you make, because we are just manufacturing stress not only for ourselves but also for our children, thinking that planning is the best way to go about ensuring success. But Alan, I'm sure there is so much wealth of knowledge, experience, and wisdom that you have. And, one interview may not be enough to get so much, to learn from you, to hear from you. But before we let you go for today, do you have any messages that you can convey to people that they can remember or make use of in their lives?
I think Jesus said, unless you become like a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. You have to be innocent. Now, I used to go into high schools in New York showing students how to do this Sahaj Yoga meditation. And if I mentioned that they might be innocent, the average kid would run outside immediately and lose his innocence or her innocence because it wasn't desirable in their eyes. But if you lose this is why I was depressed for so long, because essentially I'd lost my innocence and I'd nothing to believe in. I'd no reason to get out of bed in the mornings, except the alternative was even worse. So you see, all the trashy pop psychology magazines say live in the present, but none of them tell you how to do it. So that's one of the main things.
Well, yes, innocence definitely is a virtue, like you said, which makes you believe in something. Otherwise, everything is so logical and analytical. But yeah, I wish more of us could learn to be innocent and just
Yes.
enjoy more peaceful and balanced lives. Thank you so much, Alan, for coming and talking to us today from your experience, from your wisdom, and looking forward to more opportunities of talking to you. Thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. All the best.